Okay, well, let's look back to, now we're talking supplements, but let's jump back into the enhanced athletes and their experience. And I think, as we mentioned earlier, there's been this real push towards certainly being more opaque and more transparent in the industry. And hopefully that leads to a kind of a safer use model, for people. What's your experience? And, like, when people are getting a coach having to deal with their enhanced experience, what's your experience with it now?
Yeah, so over the years, like I said, I mean, obviously I've been doing this for quite a while now, and I can't sit here and say that I've made every best decision in the world since I started. I started being kind of self-taught, and I
Hmm.
taught myself about drugs, but I knew a little bit less about the health side. And then as I've gotten more and more experience, and I've worked with some top individuals in the industry, I've hired mentors. I have a mentor who I work with still to this day, and he's one of the best in the industry in terms of health stuff. And I've learned way more. I realized that, like, there's a way better way to do this. And people, the word you use, safer use model, is what I practice and what I preach.
Hmm.
For instance, like first exposures, like we talked about before, there was a friend of mine who had an athlete on a first exposure that ended up leaving him and going to another coach, and all of a sudden he's on 1.5 grams a gear almost, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's astronomical, especially for a young individual to be doing. So for me, it's about minimizing risk over the long term, and like listening to the body, and very slow escalations and titrations and things, right? Like, you read an internet forum, it's going to tell you, well, you should start your first cycle at 500 milligrams of testosterone. What?
Yeah.
Excuse me? Like,
Might as
I
well hit it hard. If you're gonna hit it, you gotta go hard.
100%. And like, I'm not opposed to even mentioning what I do in terms of dosages
Yeah.
and stuff when I start people, because it is safe. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like I said to you, I'm always going to use or like, this is how I plan things. I'm always going to use a bioidentical hormone, right? So for instance, if a male is hopping on steroids for the first time and going to do his first exposure, well, I'm definitely always going to use a testosterone first, because it's a bioidentical hormone. The body understands how to utilize
Yeah.
testosterone. And yeah, issues can come from that for sure. Aromatization, gynecomastia, and whatnot. And that's where another problem arises, is people start to get some of these symptoms, and coaches and athletes start hammering drugs. They start just keep pushing your dose, keep the
Pilot.
dose
Yeah.
really high, keep running your 500, 700 a gram of this, but let's just put a band-aid on it by taking this drug. Well, what they fail to realize is estrogen is also extremely important for heart, brain health, for fat
Hmm.
loss, for muscle building. When you start taking a drug that just crushes that estrogen, not only is it going to also limit your progress, it's going to be harmful to your health. Now, we could go into the flip side, where these aromatase inhibitors like letrozole, aromasin, arimidex, those things are also going to have very, very, very harsh realities when it comes to the effects on lipids and HDL
Hmm.
cholesterol, LDL cholesterols, right? So when you're just putting a drug in to counteract the negative effects of another drug, and it's one thing on top of the other and one thing on
Yeah.
top of the other, all of a sudden you end a cycle and there's like grams of shit, and like, it's a really, really bad place to be. So for me, like I said, I expose people to one thing at a time, very slowly. And I'll introduce somebody to testosterone, and we'll see how things go. We'll start at a dosage at a TRT level, or a replacement therapy level. And then we'll
Hmm.
titrate that level up a little bit and see what happens. Okay,
Yeah.
great. We're getting some really good results here. We stay there for 4, 6, 7 weeks, however long the body continues to progress for. Okay, now it might be time to titrate things up a little bit more. Now we give them a little bit more. Okay, here's the response. Okay, well, a little bit more over time. Awesome. We're at a really good spot now. We're at about 400 milligrams a week, maybe, of this drug. And all of a sudden, there's some issues happening. There's some potential sensitive nipples. There's a little bit of gyno. Okay, whoa. We're not going to just start hammering these drugs we talked about.
Right.
Instead, we're going to pull back, and we're going to
Right.
introduce a new drug that'll take you back to your 400 milligram dosage, but a drug that's not going to aromatize the same. So maybe a DHT, like a Primobolan, a Masteron, those
Right.
kind of things, right? So it's very cyclical and thought out in the way we're
Hmm.
doing things, not just taking a drug to replace this. So cycle design does matter, and it's
Yeah.
very, very important, right? And if you actually look at a spreadsheet, and you look at somebody that, for instance, takes 12 weeks of this cycle of 500 milligrams of this drug, 300 milligrams of that drug, 400 milligrams of that drug. So right there, you're at 1200 milligrams, 1.2 grams. So you multiply 1.2 by 12 weeks. Well, you're looking at, what is that, 14 point something, whatever that looks like, 14 grams across 12 weeks, right? Well, if I'm titrating people's dosages very slowly, starting at like 150 or 200 milligrams up to a peak dose, that total milligram dosage that you were able to get to over 12 weeks and have to stop your cycle because either some health stuff happened or that was just your 12-week cycle, I can take people and have their exposures way longer and have them progressing for 5 or 6 months. And I still don't even touch that total milligram dosage that you ended up getting to in 12 weeks.
Right.
And we didn't see nearly the amount of side effects because every time we put something in, the body told us what was happening. And we made an adjustment based on things. Okay, your body doesn't handle that drug well. Let's pull it out. Let's put this, let's do this one. Right. So it's, again, it all comes back to listening to the body.
Yeah.
And over time, like, people don't need to be exposed to a gram of gear in their first run of steroids.
Yeah.
You don't need that. If you, quite frankly, I'm a firm believer, if you can't make good results on low amounts of gear or PEDs in your first exposures of usage, you have no business ever using them. Yeah. And that's the reality of it, right? Like, there are non-responders to steroids, just like there's non-responders to a lot of things. And some people progress at genetically different rates.
Yeah.
And
I think that
somebody who's just hammering a lot of drugs because the only way you can progress is a lot of drugs. For me, you ain't the person to work with me, because that's just never going to be the case.
Yeah. I think part of the challenge is everything, we're in this world of, you know, the quick fix, download the program and follow that. And it's just like, I can download my diet, I can download my workout, and I can download a cycle, and I'm just going to do that. And, you know, who knows who wrote that?
100%. And I agree with that. I think one of the biggest problems here is the availability of information. It's been great. It's been great for many things. Like, we're doing a podcast right now where I'm able to express my peace of mind and what I believe is optimal. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I'll tell you right now, that approach is the smart approach to steroid use. And I would argue somebody till the death on that. You will never talk me away from that.
Hey, this is Craig. Thanks for watching this episode. I have a number of really interesting people that I'm going to be speaking with over the next while. Don't miss an episode. They're going to be great. If you have a chance, jump over to the partnerstaffing.com website. All the links to the videos that we're doing that are employment related will be there. Anyways, hit subscribe. Special thanks to our editor, Chris Velosevich. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Craig out.